My name's Cameron Lanier. I'm the Director of Marketing here. And I have with me Lisa Schlegg, who is our WISP account manager. You want to say hi, Lisa?
Hi, everybody.
So Lisa, if you communicate with us and you're in the WISP market, you'll tend to work with Lisa. And so she's probably a person you'll want to become familiar with. All right, so if you are not familiar with us, like I said, Gamma Electronics, we're based in Southern California in a city called Pomona, which is about an hour outside of Los Angeles. And we're actually like right next to the LA County Fairgrounds, if you've ever been there, or if you've seen the drag races that go on there, the hot rod races there. So we are just around the corner from that. So Southern California. And we kind of started in the world of aero defense, and we like to say we were born in the world of aero defense, which really means heat shrink. We came into heat shrink. We still do a lot of heat shrink, and we've worked with companies that include Bell Helicopter, Boeing, Lockheed Martin. We still continue to work with these companies. We still work a lot in the heat shrink market, and it's been a very successful venture for us. But in recent years, even though we started in the heat shrink world, we've actually kind of become known as the cold shrink guys, and not a title that we are offended by. We actually really enjoy it. And it's kind of a funny story of how we got there, but ever since becoming more known as the cold shrink guys, we ventured into other weatherproofing products. And so with that said, you can see a number of our most popular products here. And our whole goal with our weatherproofing product line is to produce weatherproofing products that save you time and money. And really what we want to talk about today is, I know weatherproofing is a major issue for anyone who works in telecom, WISP markets, etc. Anyone dealing with RF out in the elements, weatherproofing is a big problem. And so the thing that we really want to hit on today, because we work with the large carriers and we provide a lot of weatherproofing for them, we want to kind of help you understand what their mindset is about weatherproofing, how they approach weatherproofing and why, and how that's informed some of our product line. And so this requires a little bit of telling a part of our history, and that part of our history is with AT&T. So AT&T, back in 2014, they were using EPDM cold shrink, as you can see in this picture here. And EPDM cold shrink was a product they kind of liked, but it wasn't necessarily working out great for them. And so they came to us asking for help. And if you're not familiar with cold shrink literally, it shrinks from one larger size to a much smaller size, as you can see here. And cold shrink is a really great product. It requires no heat to shrink. You just remove this inner plastic perforated tubing, you pull this ripcord and the perforation just quickly removes, and it requires no heat to shrink. And then it has no adhesive either, which can be highly advantageous for a number of reasons and when it comes to weatherproofing. And so cold shrink is a really awesome product, and AT&T, they liked the idea of cold shrink, but they weren't exactly happy with the version they had at the time, which you can see here was an EPDM model, and it just wasn't watertight enough for them. So they came to us and said, what can we do? We like the idea. What can happen here? So we sat down and we figured out, it's a long story of how we got there, but essentially it came down to, we figured out how to make silicone cold shrink. And this silicone cold shrink solved a lot of the problems that AT&T was having. So namely, silicone, if we compare it to EPDM cold shrink, one of the biggest differences between the two is EPDM cold shrink just doesn't have as large of a temperature range that it's resistant to. Whereas silicone cold shrink is pretty extreme in the temperatures it will withstand. You can see here -60 Celsius or -76 Fahrenheit, up to 446 Fahrenheit or 230 Celsius. I mean, it's pretty remarkable what it can withstand temperature-wise. However, the even larger reason that AT&T was very keen on this silicone cold shrink was because of the shrink ratio. And this is a quick little video that shows the difference between EPDM and silicone's shrink ratios. So you see here the EPDM is a 3-to-1, where the silicone can go up to a 5-to-1. And if you just think about, okay, this white circle is where both of these cold shrinks started, and the EPDM only gets down to that size, whereas the silicone gets down to this much smaller size. Even though it may seem like it's not that large a difference, when you're shrinking down to something the size of a cable, it makes a world of difference. And so that is the reason, in fact, let me skip ahead there, that you can see the EPDM cold shrinks often come with this foam strip. They can't shrink quite small enough to get a tight wrap around a cable or whatever, or the connection. So they provide this foam strip to kind of make up this difference. Well, with silicone, you don't need that. Silicone's going to get small enough, you're not going to have those problems. It's going to be watertight all on its own, and it removes an additional step that comes with the EPDM. Plus, the foam strip is just not going to be as resistant to water as a rubber material would be.
As a silicone, yeah.
And silicone specifically is going to be incredibly resistant, more so than the EPDM. So unfortunately, there's still a lot of EPDM can be a great product, but unfortunately, there's a lot of companies out there who are sometimes almost making it seem like they're selling silicone when they're really selling EPDM. And so one of the things to know is that you want to know which one you're buying, obviously. So silicone, as you can see here, we put the S in our part number on the silicone, so S for silicone. But on top of that, if you kind of look for the more shiny, glossy version of cold shrink, you're usually getting silicone. Where with EPDM, it's going to have this kind of flatter, matted look to it. So that's a key way to tell the difference between the two, and that means the silicone's going to get that better shrink ratio, it's going to have that better temperature resistance, all of those things. So with that said, we gave this to AT&T and they tested it and they loved it, and here's a very quick install video showing it. And there you go. So Gamma Cold Shrink, that video, for the record, has not been doctored. That was an actual install time. It really is just that fast. So, and you can see the tight wrap it gets on this connection. This is a 7/16 DIN, and it gets a very tight wrap, but more importantly, it gets the tight wrap not just on the connector, but on the cable. And you can see it's able to wrap all of it securely with that 5-to-1 shrink ratio. So it's really, really remarkable stuff, and we're very proud of it, and that's why we're proud to be called the Cold Shrink guys. So let me skip ahead here. So we made silicone cold shrink, presented it to AT&T, they loved it, and in 2015 they approved it, and it is since being used heavily by AT&T to this day. It's one of our, if not our top selling product, and they are using it on specifically their FirstNet build. If you're familiar with that build that's going out nationwide right now, AT&T won the bid to build a network for first responders. And so we're very proud to not only have our cold shrink being used by AT&T, but specifically on the FirstNet build. So this kind of brings us to the question, why cold shrink? I mean, there's lots of weatherproofing options, but why did AT&T want cold shrink specifically? Remember, they came to us and said they liked the idea of cold shrink. They wanted to use cold shrink. They just wanted to see if it can be improved upon, which we were able to do. So what are all the reasons here of going with cold shrink versus others? Well, the first thing is they needed something that would obviously deliver results, which silicone cold shrink, as we talked about the shrink ratio and the temperature range, it does those things. So they needed something to deliver results. But we asked these questions of AT&T because they actually didn't tell us right off the bat, like why cold shrink versus other options. And specifically, they were using a lot of tape and butyl at the time. So we said, why did you guys want this versus tape and butyl? And we kind of hypothesized the reasons they might want cold shrink. And one of the top reasons that we thought of was installation time. As you saw in the video, we're very proud of how quickly you can install cold shrink. It's pretty amazing stuff. And we started putting numbers together, and we were like, well, this installs in seconds, less than a minute for sure. And they've got to love that. And we did the numbers on that and found out that in typical telecom tower installations, when a brand new tower is going up, a lot of the time they're using 50, sometimes up to 70 cables, which means 100 connections. Okay, so if we do the math on that real quick, okay, if cold shrink took 1 minute, which it doesn't, but if it did, and you had to do 100 different connections, you're talking 100 minutes, or a little more than an hour and a half. Okay, you compare that to tape and butyl. Okay, tape and butyl, we've been told at best by numerous installers have told us you're looking at 5 minutes, you know, when it's at its best. That's a difference of 100 minutes to 500 minutes when you're looking at 100 different connections.
Especially if they can get their fingers in around those
yeah, and the spacing around the connections. There's so many issues with installing it, right? And so you're talking the difference between an 8-hour day and a at most 2-hour day. Okay, 2 hours is, you know, on the heavy side. And so if you look at the numbers even in greater perspective, cold shrink at its worst, you're looking at an hour to an hour 40 minutes. Tape and butyl at its best is a full day's worth of work. If tape and butyl, which it tends to take more around the 10-minute mark for most of the guys we've talked to about it, when we've tried it ourselves, it tends to take around 5 to 10 in that range. But we've heard some guys say, look, at its worst in harsh environments and all these, it can take up to 15 minutes, which means you're looking at saving immense amount of time by going to cold shrink. Okay, so you're, you know, literally days worth of work can be compacted down to a couple of hours by using cold shrink. So we thought by putting these numbers together, installation time's got to be the reason. But again, not the primary reason that AT&T chose cold shrink. That was not the reason they said mattered most to them. So then we thought, as Lisa kind of mentioned earlier, accessibility. We thought, okay, it must be the small amount of space you have between these connections and how tape and butyl is not going to fit in to those spaces very well. You can see less than an inch here. And as any of you have installed know, getting up on a tower with those cables on those connections, wrapping tape and butyl around it, it's just a nightmare. So we thought accessibility must be one of the main reasons. No, again, not the primary reason that they like cold shrink. One thing they did tell us that we didn't think of right off the bat was installer quality control. And by this, I mean that you can have a brand new installer and a very experienced installer get essentially the same results with cold shrink. And they told us that, and we thought, oh, that makes a lot of sense. But again, not the primary reason that they chose cold shrink. So we essentially were thinking everything about cold shrink that they must love is about the installation process. But really what it boiled down to for AT&T was maintenance. That's what they care about more than anything. And when we started wrapping our heads around that, it makes a ton of sense. Maintenance means time and money. And if you think about it, it makes a ton of sense that they can plan what the costs of a tower are. They can plan how much time it'll take to build, how much the materials will cost, all of it. But maintenance is much less predictable. And so they wanted to reduce those unknown costs. They want to bring that cost down and help their bottom line. And a study was done recently that said maintenance costs are approximately 49% of operational costs for major carriers deploying 4G. I mean, half of your cost, your operational costs, can be all devoted to your operations. And so, or not operations, but your maintenance. And so with that said, AT&T just informed us one of the top reasons for maintenance costs, it's bad weatherproofing. Okay, and not only have they told us this, but Tiger teams have told us this. Telecom Tiger teams are, if you're not familiar, they're the teams that are sent out by the telecom companies to go do the maintenance on the towers. And so they've all told us bad weatherproofing is one of, if not the main reason for maintenance costs. And so with this said, they estimated it's got to be at least a 30%, maybe as much as a third, are due to weather-related issues, the maintenance calls. And so that brought up the question, okay, well, what's wrong with the weatherproofing that's resulting in this much maintenance, this many maintenance calls, this much in maintenance costs? And it's really, this is an oversimplification, but either the weatherproofing just doesn't work or it doesn't last. Okay, and by that, we can actually go back to the original example of EPDM cold shrink. EPDM cold shrink kind of works in theory, but you have to use the foam strip. We've talked to guys who's told us they actually zip tie the ends of it to make sure it gets a watertight seal. And so you're using foam strips and or zip ties, it just doesn't provide the results that you want because of the shrink ratio issues in particular. And so yeah, it's good in theory, but it doesn't produce the results.
And in regards to extreme temperatures, like Canada,
Yeah,
their maintenance is what we hear twice a year. They have to go out
yeah,
and do weatherproof.
Yeah, and that's a good example. We recently spoke to an installer in Canada who said that twice a year he's having to swap out his tape and butyl. So yeah, it just doesn't work. And the other option, again, looking at tape and butyl here, and I know we found a really glamorous photo, but tape and butyl just doesn't last. As Lisa pointed out, that installer in Canada, he's replacing it twice a year. That's a lot of time and money to swap out your weatherproofing and make sure your connection's secure. We've talked to a lot of installers who told us the reason it doesn't last, namely, is temperature. And we saw how well silicone works, how resistant it is to temperature. And you see tape and butyl, it's not.
Well, it cracks.
It cracks when it's cold and it melts when it's hot. And so it just doesn't last. And the thing that we've also been told is when it melts, it often melts into the connection, which ruins your cable. And so, or presents VSWR issues. So it's just a nightmare. So temperature issues. The adhesive of the tape will stop sticking, which means you see it start to unravel, which means you have to replace it because it defeats the entire point. Water's going to seep in. There's just so many issues, and silicone cold shrink solves them. And that what you're seeing right there is what we're most proud of. From AT&T and others, we've had no reported failures, zero, about our cold shrink. They put it up, and it works. It just works, and it's awesome.
No one's never come back.
Yeah, we've never had anyone come back. So why does AT&T use cold shrink? Well, to reduce their maintenance costs. And it's been a huge savings for them over time. So this is kind of the whole thing we'd like to drive home today, is if there's anything you take away from this webinar, it's make sure that you are approaching weatherproofing with maintenance in mind. Don't make the mistake we made where we went to AT&T and thought, oh, this is all about your installation costs. This is all about saving time and money on the installation side. No, this is all about maintenance. If you approach it with maintenance in mind, the long-term savings far outweigh what you're going to do on the installation side. So think about the long-term savings that come with weatherproofing. So that kind of informed our mindset about weatherproofing and our goals and how we wanted to develop our weatherproofing products. We want it to be as maintenance free as possible. That is our entire goal with this stuff. And there are kind of some, sub goals, if you will, that fall underneath that. Obviously, in order to make it as maintenance free as possible, it needs to provide incredible protection. And that's why we've actually switched a lot of our products over, or when we've developed new products, we like using silicone because it's so incredible in weather. But it has to last, okay? And again, silicone lends itself to that. But the last thing is we just like it, and we think all the installers, everyone out there likes it to be fast and easy to use. So those are kind of our three objectives when we develop our products. We want it to be easy, it's got to last, and it's got to, of course, protect against weather. And as you can see, cold shrink nails it, right? It's incredible weather protection. It lasts, we guarantee it to last the lifetime of the cable, and it's a very fast and easy install, as we saw in the video. So AT&T fell in love with it, and we love it as well. It's become very popular in the industry, and we developed this tagline kind of based around cold shrink in all our products, but we genuinely try to make sure that our products install in seconds and will last a lifetime. And often when we say lifetime, we mean the lifetime of the cable. So cold shrink has been a huge success for us. And before I move on, I just want to ask if there's any questions about cold shrink.
I am not seeing any at this time. So,
all right.
Yep. If any pops up as you're presenting to the next slide, I'll stop you.
All right, sounds good.
Mm.
So RF weatherproofing. We know that cold shrink is a great product, but it doesn't necessarily, we don't have a one size that fits all solution. There are obviously different scenarios where you might need different options. And for that reason, the first thing we did is we actually branched out with the cold shrink we offer. We offer it in different sizes we have tested and have perfectly matched them to these connections and cables. And we are often testing them on new things to make sure they work. And when we test them, we drop them we don't just like spray water at them or something like that. We drop them into a water tank overnight sometimes. Usually we at minimum drop them in for 45 minutes. And then we bring it out and we see if any water got inside. And we can guarantee on these connections and cables, water did not get inside after dropping it in a tank. And we're really proud of that. But one thing we're excited about is we actually just tested a couple different connections down here. And so if you're using Next 10s or 2.2-5s, we have just recently tested those and found that our TNS65 will work on those connections as well. So we're really excited about that. Now we know in the WISP market that LMR 195 is used quite often. And one thing we found is we felt like it tested pretty well, but we wanted to make it absolute. And so we developed our own LMR 195 cable that we call GMR 195. And the GMR 195, as I said earlier, we started in the world of heat shrink. So we took an LMR 195 and we built it up on the end with a very thick outer diameter heat shrink. We built it up so that we can make sure that the cold shrink here is going to grab very tight to that cable. Cold shrink shrinks it has an incredible shrink ratio, as I mentioned earlier, but it can still only shrink so far. And we just wanted to guarantee the results with an LMR 195. So that's why we developed this entire product, the cable that comes with the cold shrink, to guarantee those results. So that's the GMR 195 if you want to use 195s with cold shrink. We also offer our cold shrink in different colors. We've had numerous people say they want to kind of just color code. A lot of guys do tape that they color code with on the cables, and they can kind of skip that step if they color code with cold shrink itself. So that's one of the reasons we went with that. But that's cold shrink. In terms of RF weatherproofing beyond cold shrink, we again looked at other options beyond cold shrink that might be applicable in different situations. So we have cold shrink, but also we kind of refer to these as our big three here and often our big four with our magic tape. We have the slide lock, weatherproof boot, and the magic tape. So these all kind of meet our goals that we mentioned with cold shrink. We want them all to have these same traits, and we feel they all do. And so with that said, I want to talk briefly about each of them and why you might use one versus another. So the slide lock, for example, the slide lock is great. This was actually developed again in conjunction with AT&T. They asked us to develop this. And so it has a silicone gel interior. We already talked about the incredible traits of silicone. And then it also has a plastic exterior. So it kind of helps protect against the elements while making sure you have a nice secure interior. And it has this little sliding mechanism, and you just take this slide lock, wrap it around the cable, and then slide the little locking mechanism into place, and it installs in seconds. And when it does, you can see the connection stays inside, and as it closes, this is the silicone gel just wraps itself around that connection and makes it incredibly secure. In fact, when we developed the product, AT&T specifically told us they want to see the gel come out around the connection. And so we developed it with lots of gel inside to make sure it's popping out the top there, and you can make sure you can see it whenever you are installing and give yourself a secure connection. One of the main reasons, though, beyond its incredible weatherproofing properties, to use the slide lock is that it's reusable. And so the slide lock, there's some limitations here, to be completely honest. If you can use the slide lock as a permanent solution and leave it up there for years, if you do, that gel inside is probably going to take a shape or take form and kind of not be easy to reuse outside of that shape and form. But if you go up a few months later and you want to pop it off and pop a new one, pop a new cable in and pop the slide lock back on, that's probably going to be fine. And so if you're worried about, oh, I'm going to swap out this cable in the next few months, this is a great time that you could look at using the slide lock. And here's another quick video to show you just truly how fast it installs. And there you go. And again, you can see that silicone gel popping out the top there, and it's making sure you have a nice tight seal on that connection.
Yeah, it's a visual that it's secured.
And that's the thing is AT&T specifically said they wanted that visual to kind of confirm to their installers that it was nice and tight. So we developed it with that in mind. So again, AT&T approved, very popular product for us. It's been great, especially if you are, again, thinking you might need to reuse it. The only limitation on slide locks is that it's not as available in as many sizes. It is available in numerous sizes, as you can see here, but not as many as Cold Shrink and some of our other products. So that's the Gamma slide lock. Next we have our weatherproof boots.
Hey Cameron, I'm going to stop you real quick.
Sure.
I had a question here. Someone's asking, are samples available?
Yes,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
And we at the end can talk about how you can get there. So we'll get there in just a little bit.
Thank you. Thank you for the question.
Yeah, thank you. So we got weatherproof boots here. Weatherproof boots might be the easiest ones to work with of all of our, which is saying something, but of all of our weatherproofing products. So it's made, again, silicone rubber. The key to the weatherproof boots is they need to be installed before you terminate the cable. Make sure they're on the cable. Otherwise, it can just, we've had guys try to put it on after the fact, and you can't just guarantee the results as cleanly. And we feel better about it if you put it on before. And there's some you're just never going to get on after that cable's terminated, especially something like a 7/16 stint. So with that said, here's a very quick video of the weatherproof boots. Now, as you've probably already figured out, the big thing with the weatherproof boots is how quickly they slide on, but also how quickly they can slide off. So they are a very much, if you need to get back into the connection, they're a fantastic option for that. And so the slide-on boots or the weatherproof boots have become very popular, and we have them in a number of sizes. But the thing I want to mention is this is probably the product we get the questions about the most. Like, does it really work? It just looks like this rubber sleeve essentially that's going around it. And the thing that we like to point out is it's deceptively simple. There's actually quite a bit of technology packed into these boots. I mean, you see these little ridges here that are making sure that the water is staying out, but also making sure that these are perfectly sized to the different cables and connection so that they really are watertight. And you may have heard it in the video where you hear that popping sound. That's the air pressure coming out of these boots. And it's so tight that you hear and you can feel it when you install the air pressure inside the boot. So there's a lot of technology packed into these things. They're just deceptively simple. And you can see on the back end, you get these same ridges, but you also get this watertight seal on both the connector and cable side of the boot. So very awesome products. We also have them available in right angles. They don't install quite as easily. Sometimes you might need a little grease on there to get it up and over the connection, but they still are a much easier to use solution and very watertight and very awesome when you have those right angles that you can't seem to weatherproof another way. So there's lots of variations on that. And you can see here, these are just some of our variations. We actually have some new boots coming out very soon. These are just some of the variations we currently offer. So awesome in terms of if you need a size, we hopefully have it for the boots, but it's also something we're always willing to explore and look at new options as well.
And what's great is that you can either choose the boot or the cold shrink when you purchase our cables.
Yes.
They come kitted with either or, your choice.
Yeah, so Lisa's talking about the cables, and we'll get there in a minute and talk about what she means there a little more, but yes, you can get our boots or cold shrink with cables. Before I get there though, I want to talk real quick about our magic tape. Magic tape is still a great solution. This is not made of silicone, it's made of ethylene propylene rubber, which has some, not maybe as quite as good as silicone, but some still great temperature resistant properties to it. And there's no adhesive. So it's really awesome stuff that because there's no adhesive, you don't have to worry about it's getting cold, the adhesive stops working, it's getting hot, the adhesive starts running. It adheres to itself, and it's really awesome. If any of you've ever cut this stuff off a cable or anything, in fact, I should get a picture of that and put it in the slideshow, but the really cool thing is it becomes almost like cold shrink, like the way it wraps itself, and it's so tight around the cable. So magic tape is really cool stuff. You might also have heard it called self-amalgamating or self-fusing tape. The problem with magic tape is you can't guarantee the install results. So going back to our earlier point about AT&T loving the fact that a brand new installer and an experienced installer can essentially install cold shrink and have the same results, magic tape, that's a little more iffy. That's all. It's true that you can guarantee the results with cold shrink and with boots and with the slide locks, but magic tape, you might need a little more installer expertise. Not that it's that hard, but it's just not as easy to guarantee. And so in this video, this one's a little longer, 30 seconds, you can see how it adheres to itself and it just holds tight. So yeah, that white piece of strip you see on the tape is removed. It's put on there so it doesn't adhere to itself, obviously, while it's shipped. And then you remove that white piece of strip, and then you're able to adhere it to itself. You just stretch it out a little bit, it adheres, and it holds tight, and it will hold tight for years. It's really, really awesome. So magic tape is another great product. It installs much faster than other options. Here's the thing is, when should you use each? We kind of addressed this a little bit, but I want to just recap it real quick. Cold shrink is what we kind of consider our set it and forget it. If you really don't feel like you got good cables, you're not worried about it, put your cold shrink on there and don't worry about it ever again. You're not going to need to worry about cold shrink. It is your set it and forget it option. If you feel like you might need to at some point swap out that cable in the near future, you might want to use something like a slide lock. And then boots, obviously, you have to make sure the boot is coming on the cable before it's all installed. So if you're able to make sure it's on there before terminating the cable, then the boot's a great option for being able to re-access that connection. So cold shrink is your, okay, I don't think I need to re-access. These both allow you to re-access the connection. The last is magic tape. Magic tape's a little more similar to the cold shrink in that you'd probably have to cut it off if you want to re-access the connection. But the thing we like to say about it is, if you have no other options, you should use magic tape. So you have an odd connection shape or something in an odd place, you might not have another option than magic tape. And this is why we always say you should probably just keep it in your bag, have it available to you. The other thing here is this: if you have like a nick in your cable, and you don't want obviously water working its way in, have this with you and just wrap the cable where that nick is, and then you can real quickly make sure you're protecting yourself. So those are the different weatherproofing options. And to showcase really quick how quickly they all install and what they do, we made this 30-second video that shows all three of our big weatherproofing products get installed in under 30 seconds. So I know the video's a little jumpy right now, but you can check that out on our website, or Streakwave has that as well, so you guys can check that out. But all three of our big weatherproofing products in less than 30 seconds, and they will last you the lifetime of that cable. So with that said, one thing we want to mention as we kind of wrap things up here are cable assemblies. And the reason we want to mention it is kind of what Lisa brought up earlier, is, you know, we had a lot of guys come to us and say, we love your weatherproofing, and we've kind of become known as the weatherproofing, RF weatherproofing company. But what if, you know, like a boot, I need it on the cable before it's terminated. We can do that for you. So for example, here are some of our cables that we offer. We recently added Next 10s as well, if you're in need of those connections. And low PIM cables are used heavily, let me go back here, are used heavily in the telecom world and in LTE deployments. Low loss, which is obviously used more in the WISP industry, we have numerous options. We primarily focus on 195s and 400s, but there are some other options there as well. And then you can buy bulk cable from us if you want to make your own as well. So did you have something?
Nope.
Okay. And so the main reason for us doing this, like I said, was weatherproof boots. Is we want to be able to get our boots on the cable for you easily, and we can guarantee the results right out of the factory. So that's why we kind of started pairing these up. And the cool thing about it is we're able to provide a savings to you when we do this. So essentially, if you purchased a low PIM cable, for example, and you purchased all the elements separately from one another, the cable might be 50 bucks, which is a great price for a low PIM cable actually. But you buy cold shrink times 2, you're looking at another 30 bucks, okay, $32 there. And that's our largest version of cold shrink and most expensive. Okay, that brings you to a total of $82. Now, what we did is we took all those things, put it together in one kit, and if you purchase it all together, you're looking at cable and cold shrink for $70, and it's just one SKU. You don't have to go and order each part separately. You buy one thing, you get all three of them packaged together, and you're saving yourself a lot of money in the long run. Getting a low PIM cable for $70 is often a bargain. Getting it with weatherproofing is almost unthinkable. And so we really try to provide the value here, and it's something that you should definitely look at. If you're looking at cables, you want to get it with weatherproofing, obviously, and this is a great way for you to go. But on top of that, you can also make sure you're choosing what you want. You can choose boots, you can choose cold shrink, and you have some options there available too.
You could also, if you need, you can have cold shrink on one side and a boot on the other.
Thank you. Yeah, exactly. So if you didn't hear that, you can have cold shrink on one side of the cable if you want, and boot on the other. We've done that many times. These are very customizable, and it's really they're awesome options to use. And as I mentioned earlier, we offer the GMR 195, which is very much made specifically for the WISP market. So if you are using an LMR 195 and you want to use cold shrink on it, really we feel like we're the only cold shrink that you can guarantee working on an LMR 195, and that's with the built up cable. So using our heat shrink. So if you want to do that, look into the GMR 195, make sure you are perusing that option.
Yep.
So we also, if you need custom cables, usually this is low PIM cables that we make customized, fully customized, but you just choose your cable type, your connection, the length, and your weatherproofing. And usually weatherproofing is boot or cold shrink. The slide locks have to be very much determined. Like there's fewer options of sizes they fit. So usually we offer just boots or cold shrink. But cable length is actually one of the main reasons people do this, is when you need that odd length. We've done cables up to 40 feet.
And a foot.
Yeah, and some as short as a foot. So just if you really need that odd length, that's when you might want to look at this and still get weatherproofing with it.
With our cables, they're built in-house, and we have phenomenal lead times.
Yeah, our lead times, thank you, Lisa, are phenomenal. We turn these out really quickly. They're assembled right here in the United States. Here in our
every cable's tested.
Every cable's tested before it goes out. So we put a sticker on there that shows the test results. And if it doesn't meet our standards for PIM or VSWR, it doesn't go out. Nope. We will make another one. So that's our cable assemblies. And just to wrap up things here, in conclusion, number one reason, or one of the top reasons for maintenance costs, are bad weatherproofing. And so make sure you're approaching your weatherproofing with maintenance in mind. Reduce your overall costs. If your operational costs are 50% of what you're doing, and the majority of that is going to your weatherproofing, well, or it's going to weather-related issues, well, a little more investment on the weatherproofing side is going to save you a lot of money in the long run. So reduce your maintenance costs by making sure you're choosing the best weatherproofing out there, which we feel we genuinely are. And with that said, I want to also make sure we're giving a shout out to Streakwave here, who's been a great host today. And if you go to their website, let me go back real quick. If you go to their website, you can find us very easily on there. Just go up to manufacturers and you'll see Gamma Electronics, and you'll see a lot of those cable assemblies that we talked about are listed here, as well as our cold shrink and other products. You see the magic tape at the bottom, some of the boots on the cables, all that kind of stuff. So you can find a lot of the things we've been talking about right there on their website. And for those who want free samples, we absolutely give out free samples. We love doing it, and the main reason is because we want feedback. We genuinely are asking for your feedback, so we're going to get your contact info, and we're going to ask you to tell us how it worked. What did you like? What did you not like?
I will be calling on a phone.
And yes, Lisa will be calling you. And so if you want to get a free sample from us, just go to our website, which is gammaelectronics.net. And if you go up to, well, you can see here, there's, you know, all the things we talked about, cable assembly, all these things. But if you go to our cable protection page, or sorry, it's a cable protection category, and then there's an RF weatherproofing page that lists all the products we've talked about today. And on this page, you'll see some of the videos that we've shown. And if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, you'll see where you can request a free sample. And on there, you can request slide locks, cold shrink, boots, magic tape, whatever it might be. But you can go to that page, you can request a free sample. Lisa will get in contact with you. We'll send those out, and then we'll be asking for your feedback. And then, of course, if you decide you want to purchase more, please hit up Streakwave and let them know that you hopefully love our cold shrink, or love our boots, or love our cables, or love them all. And so we love that kind of feedback the most. So with that said, I'm going to close by saying thank you for joining us today. My name is Cameron Lanier. I'm the Director of Marketing. Please feel free, if you want to get in touch with me and ask any questions, that my email's right there. And Lisa Schlegg, who's with me today, is our WISP account manager. She'll be largely handling most of your questions and free samples and all that kind of stuff. And there's her email. If you just want to email her directly, you can do that as well. And so thank you again. Thank you to Streakwave. And any other questions as we wrap up here?
Thank you, Cameron and Lisa. Yes, there's just a few more questions that just came through.
Sure.
Someone was asking back on the magic tape. Usually, on average, like how much magic tape is needed for, you know, a couple usages, or how much is that roll hold?
Usually it's a few connections. It'll get a few connections for you. But you know that it can depend on the size of the connection, and obviously if you cut off more than you need. But yeah, I usually say about 4 connections per roll of tape.
And then how many times can you reuse a slide lock?
We like to say a handful of times.
About a half a dozen.
Yeah, so yeah, 5-6 times. Like I said, the longer you leave it there, that silicone is going to kind of mold into place around that connection. So it's just a matter of kind of how long you leave that slide lock in place and how long you let that silicone set.
Okay. And I think you probably touched on it briefly about removing cold shrink. Can you just kind of do a quick recap?
Yeah, so cold shrink, the only way to really remove it is to cut it off. Now, I don't want to say too much here because we are currently working on a solution for this, and it will be coming out in the coming weeks. So please keep an eye out for that, and we'll make sure to update Streakwave so that they can blast that out as well. But we're working on a very clean way to remove it. But yeah, that is one of the reasons that sometimes people choose another option other, like the boot or the slide lock, other than cold shrink, is once you cut the cold shrink off, it is not reusable. And that's why it is the set it and forget it option. If you feel like you don't want to worry about it, leave it there, use cold shrink. But if you are worried you might need to get in, you want to look at a boot or a slide lock.
Or buy more cold shrink.
Yeah, and or buy more cold, because sometimes that just happens. You know, you have to cut it off, and you're like, okay, but I know I'm not coming up here for 3 more years or 5 more years. Okay, put the cold shrink on and don't worry about it.
Yep.
You could also put a boot or a lock on there and not worry about it as well. It's really up to you.
Perfect. Well, I don't see any more other questions. So again, thank you again for taking the time and making the presentation. And thanks for everyone that attended today. We will be sending around the recorded webinar, so please stay tuned on that. And again, if there's any questions, please reach out to us at Streakwave or directly to Cameron or Lisa at Gamma Electronics. So thank you again. Have a great day.
Thank you.